Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Morning Mindset. Hey, I want to pause for just a moment and ask you, did you know I've begun producing additional content for those of you who are interested in this kind of audio teaching? They are longer episodes that I'm calling Digging Deeper. You can find out more about that and how you can get access to those episodes by looking at the description in your podcast player or app, or by going to careygreen.com/partners. All right, let's move ahead. We are looking at 1 Peter chapter 3. We are continuing with this topic that Peter brings up about submission, and he's been applying this to the Christian wife, the woman who really wants to live out her faith well as a believer in the context of her marriage. And he's given us an example of what that looked like in the old days, of how one woman applied that, and that was the matriarch Sarah and what she did in her relationship toward Abraham. And at the very tail end of this illustration using Sarah, he says, "You are her children if you do good and do not fear anything that is frightening." Now, that sounds kind of funny. Don't be afraid of what's fearful is really what he's saying. But what does he mean by that? And why does he say it? Well, from a male perspective, when I look at the issue and ask the question, what does a woman who is married to a man and is submitting to him have to be afraid of? Man, I can see all kinds of things, because we guys can be pretty boneheaded at times. We can be obtuse. We don't get some of the more nuanced parts of relationships sometimes. We don't see what's going on around us between the people that are in the context that we're in. We don't even notice we have on mismatched socks sometimes. We don't notice all kinds of things. And those blind spots that men have can, at times, bring up some pretty iffy situations, just because we step right into them sometimes. Now, I realize I'm painting with a very broad brush here, but I think most men who are humble enough to admit it would admit that that's true. And he's saying, ladies, if you are in a context where you're married and you are trying to submit to your husband, here's two things you need to focus on. Number one, do good. Don't let that place as a wife or any fear that you have about submitting to your husband cause you to do evil. So that's going to address issues of attitude. It's going to address issues of demeanor. There's all kinds of things that go into that. But then he says, don't forget, you're not really trusting your husband in this situation. You're trusting God. You see, because he says, don't fear anything that is frightening. You see, some of the women, when they hear, I've got to submit to my husband, they instantly break out in hives and a cold sweat, because that is a fearful thing. They're not sure they want to trust him to that degree. And there is legitimate reasons for that, isn't there? I mean, anytime we're going to submit ourselves to any human being, we're submitting ourselves to the possibility, not even the possibility, the likelihood that they are going to make some boneheaded decisions, that those decisions will affect us, right? And he's saying, you need to take your eyes off of the fear and put them back onto faith. You see, because in this whole context, all the way from chapter 2, where he's begun talking about this idea of submission, he's been saying that it is about trusting God. Because when we submit, whatever the context, we are reflecting the faith and the belief of Jesus Christ, because when he suffered, he entrusted himself to the Father, just like we're being told. And so, women, I realize as a wife, there are many things for you to be afraid of when it comes to submitting to that husband of yours. Many for my wife as well. But you are not to fear those things that are frightening. Rather, you are to more intentionally press into your faith in Jesus Christ. Press into him as your shield and your protector. And he will see you through. Now, tomorrow we're going to begin talking about what submission looks like for a husband. So don't go away.